The Winona Arts Center building was constructed in 1864 by the German Presbyterian Church to conduct worship services in the native language of Winona's largest immigrant population. It is the oldest wooden church in Winona and possibly in southern Minnesota. It still has its original stained glass windows, which are examples of the American Opalescent School. A large number of Welshmen settled in southern Minnesota, especially in the Mankato area. In 1871, the church invited the Welsh to use the building to conduct services and start a Sunday school in their native tongue.
A Child's Christmas in Wales by Dylan Thomas. One Christmas was so much like another in those years around the sea-town corner, now and out of all sounds except the distant speaking of voices I sometimes hear a moment before sleep. That I can never remember whether it snowed for 6 days and 6 nights when I was 12, or whether it snowed for 12 days and 12 nights when I was 6. All the Christmases roll down towards the two-tongued sea like a cold and headlong moon, bundling down the sky that was our street, and they stop at the rim of the ice-edged fish-freezing waves, and I plunge my hands in the snow and bring out whatever I can find. In goes my hand into that wool-white, bell-tongued balls of resting at the brim of the carol-singing sea, and out comes Mrs. Prothero and the firemen. It was on the afternoon of the day of Christmas Eve, and I was in Mrs. Prothero's garden, waiting for cats with her son, Jim. It was snowing. It was always snowing at Christmas. December in my memory is white as Lapland, though there were no reindeers, but there were cats. Patient, cold and callous, our hands wrapped in socks, we waited to snowball the cats. Sleek and long as jaguars and horrible whiskered spitting and snarling, they would slink and sidle over the white back garden walls. And the lynx-eyed hunters, Jim and I, fur-capped and moccasin trappers from Hudson Bay off Mumbles Roads, would hurl our deadly snowballs at the green of their eyes. The wise cats never appeared. We were so still, like Eskimo-footed Arctic marksmen, in the muffling silence of the eternal snows, eternal ever since Wednesday, that we never heard Mrs. Prothero's first cry from her igloo at the bottom of the garden. Or if we heard it at all, it was to us like the far-off challenge of our enemy and prey, the neighbour's polecat. But soon the voice grew louder. "Fire!" cried Mrs. Prothero, and she beat the dinner gong. And we ran down the garden with the snowballs in our arms towards the house, and smoke indeed was pouring out of the dining room, and the bong was bumbillating, and Mrs. Prothero announcing ruin like a town crier in Pompeii. This was better than all the cats in Wales standing on the wall in a row. We bounded into the house laden with snowballs and stopped at the open door of the smoke-filled room. Something was burning, all right. Perhaps it was Mr. Prothero, who always slept there after midday dinner with a newspaper over his face. But he was standing in the middle of the room saying, "A fine Christmas," and smacking at the smoke with a slipper. "Call the fire brigade," cried Mrs. Prothero as she beat the gong. "They won't be there," cried Mr. Prothero. "It's Christmas." There was no fire to be seen, only clouds of smoke, and Mr. Prothero standing in the middle of them, waving his slipper as though he was conducting. "Do something," he said, and we threw all our snowballs into the smoke. I think we missed Mr. Prothero and ran out to the house to the telephone box. "Let's call the police as well," Jim said. "And the ambulance. And Ernie Jenkins, he likes fires." But we only called the fire brigade, and soon the fire engine came, and 3 tall men in helmets brought a hose into the house, and Mr. Prothero got out just in time. Before they turned on, nobody could have had a noisier Christmas Eve, and when the firemen turned off the hose and were standing in the wet, smoky room, Jim's aunt, Miss Prothero, came downstairs and peered in at them. Jim and I waited very quietly to hear what she would say to them. She said the right thing always. She looked at the 3 tall firemen in the shining helmets standing among the smoke and cinders and dissolving snowballs, and she said, "Would you like something to read?" Years and years and years ago, when I was a boy, when there were wolves in Wales and birds the colour of red flannel petticoats whisked past the harp-shaped hills, when we sang and wallowed all night and day in caves that smelt like Sunday afternoons in damp front farmhouse parlours, and we chased with the jawbones of deacons, the English and the bears, before the motor car, before the wheel, before the Duchess-faced horse, when we rode the daft and happy hills bareback. It snowed and it snowed, but here a small boy says, "It snowed last year too. We made a snowman and my brother knocked it down. I knocked my brother down, and then we had tea." But that was not the same snow. I say our snow was not only shaken from whitewash buckets down the sky, it came shoaling out of the grounds and swam and drifted out of the arms and arms and bodies of the trees. Snow grew overnight on the roofs of the houses like a pure grandfather moss, minutely ivied the walls and settled on the postman, opening the gate like a dumb thunderstorms of white, torn Christmas cards. Were there postmen then too? With sprinkling eyes and wind-cherried noses, on spread frozen feet, they crunched up to the doors and mittened on the monthly. But all that the children could hear was a ringing of bells. You mean that the postman went rat-a-tat-tat and the doors rang? I mean that the bells that the children could hear were inside of them. I only hear thunder sometimes, never bells. There were church bells too. Inside them? No, 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 in the back black snow-white belfries, tucked by bishops and storks. And they ran their tidings over the bandaged town, over the frozen foam of the powder and ice cream hills, over the crackling sea. It seemed that all the churches boomed for joy under my window, and the weathercocks crew for Christmas on our fence. Get back to the postmen. They were just ordinary postmen fond of walking in dogs on Christmas on the snow. They knocked on the doors with blue knuckles. Ours has got a black knocker. And then they stood at the white welcome mat in the little drifted porches and huffed and puffed, making ghosts with their breath, and jogged from foot to foot like little boys wanting to go out. And then the presents. And then the presents after the Christmas box, and the cold postman with the rose on his button nose tingled down the tea tray slithered run of the chilly glinting hill. He went in his icebound boots like a man on fishmonger slabs. He wagged his back like a frozen camel's hump, dizzily turned the corner of one foot, and by God, he was gone. Get back to the presents. They were the useful presents, engulfing mufflers of the old coach days and mittens made for giant sloths, zebra scarves of a substance like silky gum that could be tug-o-war down to the galoshes, blinding tam-o'-shanters like patchwork tea cozies, and bunny-suited busbies and balaclavas for victims of head-shrinking tribes. From aunts who always wore wool next to the skin, there were mustached and rasping vests that made you wonder why the aunts had any skin left at all. And once I had a little crocheted nosebag from an aunt, now alas no longer winning with us, and pictureless books in which small boys, though warned with quotations not to, would skate on Farmer Giles' pond and did and drown, and books that told me everything about the wasp except why. going to the useless presents. Bags of moist and many-coloured jelly babies and a folded flag and a false nose and a tram conductor's cap. And a machine that punched tickets and rang a bell, never a catapult. And a machine that punched tickets and rang a bell, never a catapult, once by mistake that no one could explain, a little hatchet. And a celluloid duck that made, when you pressed it, a most unduck-like sound, a mewing moo that an ambitious cat might make who wished to be a cow. And a painting book in which I could make the grass, the tree, the sea, and animals any colour I pleased. And still the dazzling sky blue sheep are grazing in the red field under the rainbow bill and pea green birds. Hard-boiled toffees, fudge, and all sorts, crunches, cracknels, humbugs, glaziers, and marzipan. And butterwelsh for the Welsh. And troops of bright tin soldiers who, if they could not fight, could always run. And snakes and families and happy ladders and easy hoppy games for little engineers, complete with instructions. Oh, easy for Leonardo. And a whistle to make the dogs bark, to wake up the old man next door, to make him beat on the wall with his stick to shake a picture of the wall. And a packet of cigarettes, you put one in your mouth, and you stood at the corner of the street, and you waited for hours in vain for an old lady to scold you for smoking a cigarette. And then with a smoke, you ate it. And then it was breakfast under the balloons. Were they uncles, like in our house? There are always uncles at Christmas. The same uncles. And on Christmas mornings, with dog-disturbing whistles and sugar fags, I would scour the swatched town for the news of the little world, and find always a dead robin by the white post office, or by the deserted swings, all but one of his fires out. Men and women wading or scooping back from chapel with tap-room noses and windbush cheeks, all albinos huddled with stiff black jarring feathers against the irreligious snow. Mistletoe hung from the gas brackets in all the front parlours. There was sherry and walnuts and bottled beer and crackers by the dessert spoons. And cats in their furabouts watched the fires and the high heap fire spat, all ready for the chestnuts and the mulling pokers. Some few large men sat in the front parlours without their collars, uncles almost certainly, trying the new cigars, holding them out judiciously at arm's length, returning them to their mouths, coughing, then holding them out again as though waiting for the explosion. And some few small ants not wanted in the kitchen, nor anywhere else for that matter, sat on the very edges of their chairs, poised and brittle, afraid to break like faded cups and saucers. Not many those mornings trod the piling streets, an old man always, thorn-bowlered, yellow-gloved, and at this time of year with spats of snow would take his constitutional to the white bowling alley and back, as he would take it wet of fire on Christmas Day or Doomsday. Sometimes two hale young men with big pipes blazing, no overcoats and wind-blown scarves would trudge unspeaking down to the forlorn sea, to work up an appetite, to walk into the waves until nothing of them was left but the two curling smoke clouds of their unextinguishable briars. Then I would be slap-dashing home, the gravy smell of the dinners of others, the smell of the brandy, the pudding, and mince coiling up to my nostrils, when out of a snow-clogged side lane would come a boy to spit of myself. And with a pink-tipped cigarette and the violet past of a black eye, cocky as a bullfinch, leering all to himself, I hated him on sight and sound, and would be about to put my dog whistle to my lips and blow him off the face of Christmas, when he suddenly, with a violent wink, put his whistle to his lips and blew so stridently, so high, so exquisitely loud, that goblin faces, their cheeks bulged with goose, would press against their tinsel windows the whole length of the white echoing street. For dinner, We had turkey and blazing pudding, and after dinner the uncles sat in front of the fire, loosened all buttons, put their large moist hands over their watch chains, groaned a little, and slept. Mothers, aunts and sisters scuttled to and fro, bearing tureens. Auntie Bessie, who had already been frightened twice by a clockwork mouse, whimpered at the sideboard and had some elderberry wine. The dog was sick. Auntie Dossie had to have 3 aspirins, but Auntie Hannah, who liked port, stood in the middle of the snowbound backyard singing like a big bosom thrush. I would blow up balloons to see how big they would blow up to, and when they burst, which they all did, the uncles jumped and rumbled. In the rich and heavy afternoon, the uncles breathing like dolphins and the snow descending. I would sit among festoons and Chinese lanterns and nibble dates and try to make a model of man of war following the instructions for little engineers and produce what might be mistaken for a seagoing tranca. Or I would go out in my bright new boots, squeaking into white wool onto the seaward hill to call on Jim, Dan and Jack, and to pad through the still streets, leaving huge deep footprints on the hidden pavements. I bet people will think there's been hippos. What would you do if you saw a hippo coming down our street? I'd go like this, bang! I'd throw him over the railings and roll him down the hill, and then I'd tickle him under the ear, and he'd wag his tail. What would you do if you saw 2 hippos? Iron flanked and bellowing, he-hippos clanked and battered through the scudding snow towards us as we passed Mr. Daniel's house. Let's post Mr. Daniel a snowball through his letterbox. Let's write things in the snow. Let's write Mr. Daniel looks like a spaniel all over his front lawn. Oh, we walked on the white shore. Can the fishes see it snowing? The silent, one-clouded heavens drifted onto the sea. Now we were snowblind travellers lost in the North Hills, and vast dewlap dogs with flasks around their necks ambled and shambled up to us baying Excelsior. We returned home through the poor streets where only a few children fumbled with bare red fingers in the wheel-rutted snow and catcalled after us, their voices fading away as we trudged uphill into the cries of the dockbirds and the hooting ships out in the whirling bay. And then at tea, the recovered uncles would be jolly, and the ice cake loomed in the corner centre of the table like a marble grave. Auntie Hannah laced the tea with rum, because it was only once a year. Bring out the tall tales now, that we were told by the fire as the gaslight bubbled like a diver. Ghosts wooed like owls in the long nights when I dared not look over my shoulders. Animals lurked in the cubbyhole under the stairs where the gas meter ticked. And I remember that we went singing carols once when the end of a long road was a drive that led to a large house. And we stumbled up the darkness of the drive that night, each one of us afraid, each one of us holding a stone, just in case. We reached the black bulk of the house. What shall we give them? Hark the herald? No, Jack said, good King Wenceslas. I'll count 3. 1, 2, 3. And we began to sing, our voices high and seemingly distant in the snow-felted darkness, round the house that was occupied by nobody we knew. We stood close together near the dark door. Good King Wenceslas looked down on the feast of Stephen. And then a small, dry voice, like the voice of someone who had not spoken for a long time, joined our singing. A small, dry, eggshell voice from the other side of the door. A small, dry voice through the keyhole. And when we stopped running, we were outside our house. The front room was lovely. Balloons floated into the hot water, butter gulping gas. Everything was good again and shone over our town. Perhaps it was ghosts, Jim said. Perhaps it was trolls, Dan said, who was always reading. Let's go in and see if there's any jelly left, Jack said. And we did that. Always on Christmas night there was music. An uncle played the fiddle, a cousin sang Cherry Ripe, and another uncle sang Drake's Drum. It was very warm in that little house. Auntie Hannah, who had got onto the parsnip wine, sang about bleeding hearts and death. And then another in which she said her heart was like a bird's nest. And then everybody laughed again. And then I went to bed. Looking through my bedroom window out into the moonlight and the unending smoke-colored snow, I could see the lights in the windows of all the other houses on our hill, and hear the music rising from them up the long, steadily falling night. I turned the gas down, I got into bed, I said some words to the close and holy darkness, and then I slept. if you ever saw it, you would even say it glows. All of the other reindeer used to cough and call him names. They never let poor Rudolph join in any reindeer games. Then one foggy Christmas Eve, Santa came to say, Rudolph, with your nose so bright, will you guide my sleigh tonight? Then all the reindeer loved him, and they shouted out with glee, Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer will go down in history.
Silent night, holy night, all is calm, all is bright, round yon virgin mother and child, holy infant so tender and mild, sleep in heavenly peace, sleep in heavenly peace. Silent night, holy night, Son of God, love's pure light, radiant beams from thy holy face, with dawn of redeeming grace. Jesus, Lord, at thy birth. Jesus, Lord, at thy birth.
We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Oh, bring us some figgy pudding. Oh, bring us some figgy pudding. Oh, bring us some figgy pudding and bring it right here. We won't go until we get some. We won't go until we get some. We won't go until we get some, so bring it right now. Good tidings we bring to you and your king. We wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Nadolig llawen a blwyddyn newydd dda i chi gyd, a disgwyl i chi'n saff dros y Nadolig ac yn y flwyddyn newydd. We wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Good night.